The images on its website are alarming. The National Socialist Movement claims to be the fastest growing neo-Nazi group in America, and it's taking its message of Aryan supremacy to Orlando.
Saying it's fighting for a race and a nation, the white supremacy group based in Minnesota is against blacks, Jews, and homosexuals. It's recruiting new members.
It's the same message neo-Nazi groups were spreading in October in Toledo, Ohio, when their peaceful hatred sparked violent protests from private citizens. Police moved in and arrested more than 100 people.
Neo-Nazi's website says the situation for white citizens in Orlando is intolerable. Folks cannot walk the streets for fear of criminal thugs. The site even offers information to help organize the rally here.
Orlando has a problem with black crime. If you guys should keep your blacks under control, we wouldn't have to be here.
We wanted to have significant numbers to represent a show of force.
SWAT officers geared up, deputies on horseback, on bicycles, snipers on top of buildings, and choppers monitoring it all.
We had approximately 100 Orange County Sheriff's deputies, and Sheriff Hansel from Osceola County sent us 40 more for crowd control.
Hello, I'm Deputy Chief Pete Gauntlet of the Orlando Police Department. I'd like to share with you today an operational overview of our response from an operational perspective to the National Socialist Movement, or NSM, rally. To start with, is our operational mission and objective during this event. The members of the Orlando Police Department will remain politically neutral and will respond to this rally in a professional manner. The mission of the Orlando Police Department will be to ensure public safety, protect life and property, protect First Amendment rights of free speech for all people present, and to maintain public order. The route itself began underneath I-4 in front of the Orlando Police Headquarters complex. It traveled immediately from the parking lot out onto Huey Avenue and then turned west onto Church Street. From Church Street, it traveled approximately 2 blocks to Terry Avenue. The route itself then turned north, went 4 blocks up to Washington Street, turned right, went 4 blocks back to Huey Avenue, at which time they stopped right in front of the federal courthouse, which is located right there at that intersection. That Saturday afternoon began with large groups filtering into downtown Orlando. Our emergency response team members, along with our mounted patrol units, K-9 units, a whole host of operational officers were in place from the morning on. Our emergency services unit had placed a mesh camera system, a wireless system on rooftops throughout the route so we could monitor hot spots and communicate to our officers in the field as well as our senior command officials as what they were seeing. In addition, the Orlando Fire Department not only deployed emergency medical services personnel to ensure that that was provided in case someone was to become injured during this event. They also deployed a great number of their own pieces of equipment to include censoring devices for WMD and things of that nature. We wanted to ensure that nobody along the way tried to put anything in the air, tried to ignite any propane gas cans or tanks or anything along those lines. The city solid waste department went in and essentially removed trash containers, dumpsters, cleaned out various areas so that we did not have any problems along the route. In addition, part of the route included the Florida A&M Law School, which we had co-coordinated with earlier, and they actually shut down classes for that Saturday just while this event was going on. We had a total of 26 NSM demonstrators, and we estimated approximately 450 to 500 counter-protesters also attended. They range from very young juveniles to senior citizens, from African Americans to college students, from high school students to fraternity brothers, you name it, from all aspects. Good old-fashioned police work and just observation allowed us to make sure that we didn't have a problem along the route. And once again, this is a case, as these things start to unfold, the old premise of improvise, adapt, and overcome, it plays into this very, very clearly. Towards the very beginning, we had a very substantial group of anarchists that showed up masks over their faces, bandanas covering their heads, purposely trying to antagonize and to start trouble from the very beginning. We anticipated this, monitored their activity. Immediately upon seeing them gather as a large group, we deployed a direct action response team of ERT members, mounted patrol, to the area. Immediately challenged them to take off their masks because it's a violation of state law if you do not. Many did not, upon which time they were immediately arrested. And as a result, a number of them being arrested from the very beginning took a lot of the fight out of what they intended to do.
They got to protest. That's their business. That's what they believe, but don't get all aggressive about it because they're wondering why their friends are getting arrested when they're telling them, take off your masks or you'll get arrested.
We looked at our ordinances very, very closely, looked at all applicable state laws as well to ensure that if anybody conducted themselves in any sort of a violent or criminal nature, that we would take immediate action. There was a no tolerance policy in dealing with anything of violence or disorderly activity of any kind. As this event kicked off, we wanted to ensure that there was a buffer zone between the protesters and counter-protesters. As we moved along, we inserted our emergency response team members and our mounted patrol along the route to ensure that there was no clash between the groups. While large crowds followed, while there was a lot of chanting and hollering back and forth, there was no incidents of any real significant nature along the route itself. In the protest area in front of the courthouse, we had placed a buffer zone area between the protest group, the NSM group, and the counter-protesters across the street. We had put the counter-protesters in a large confined area in which we had Jersey-style barricades that actually filled with water. Those worked exceptionally well because it provided an area where they could counter-protest each other, essentially could yell at each other across the street, but were not coming at each other. We kept them totally separate with multiple ERT units that were there. The number of helicopters in the air, along with law enforcement helicopters, essentially helped drown out a lot of the screaming that was going on back and forth between the groups. So in a nutshell, while they were in their protest and counter-protest areas, they couldn't hardly hear each other for the helicopter noise, so it frankly worked to our advantage. The one disorderly conduct incident that was caught on film with a fight between the two gentlemen is the one you can see that actually got pulled over the barricades by emergency response team members. Was an actual member of one of the white supremacy groups. He was late to the event, could not get into the area that he wanted to, so he essentially went into the counter-protest area. Quickly became a target. A lot of racial slurs and things went back and forth. A fight ensued. Immediately upon the fight breaking out, both subjects were arrested. The one that you see in the video that's being pulled over was one of the white supremacy members. He was immediately arrested. The other gentleman, which you don't see, was arrested a few minutes later in the back of the counter-protest area by other members of the emergency response teams. The event itself was much shorter than we thought. They came out and did their protest. As a result, they only stayed approximately 2 hours and left. The neighborhood itself remarkably shunned the event. The majority of the 17 arrests that were all made of counter-protesters. Of that, only one African American was arrested. The rest were, I believe there were 4 juveniles, 4 women. The rest were white males, most of which weren't even from Orlando. They were from all over the state of Florida, as well as some from outside of the state that had purposely traveled down here to this event.
There were major concerns leading up to this neo-Nazi rally in the last couple of days that many young African-American men would be arrested as counter-demonstrators. Well, that didn't happen. In fact, only 17 people were arrested in total. And tonight, the emotions that came out during this rally earlier today will be remembered here in downtown Orlando for years to come.
I've been black all my life. Black folks ain't gonna stay inside, all right? And you can't make black folks stay inside.
He says others probably won't even know about the march ahead of time and will be caught by surprise.
They don't know what's happening. When they see them march down the street, they're gonna get excited about it. So if we're not out there to do calm and peace, then there's gonna be a problem.
I am Deputy Chief Val Demings, assigned to the Patrol Services Bureau of the Orlando Police Department. When we found out that the neo-Nazis, the National Socialist Movement, were definitely going to hold their rally in Orlando, we quickly realized that we were going to need the community to join with us and need their support, and also get their suggestions about how we should handle the situation in Orlando. About 9 days out from the rally, we called a meeting with several of the community leaders. We called pastors, particularly those pastors who had churches in the area where the National Socialist Movement were going to hold their march and their rally. We also called pastors who were actually involved in our community. We reached out to some of the local business owners, as well as representatives from the NAACP, and other community activists joined us here at the Orlando Police Department for a meeting to talk about the community's approach to the neo-Nazi rally. They came here, met, we talked about it, and pretty much all agreed that the best approach was to simply ignore the rally and for people to stay home and stay away, believing that without an audience there's no show, and that the National Socialist Movement would move on.
Dismiss it, even the idea, the thought that they're even there. If you don't give them anything to fuel the fire, there's no fire to be fueled.
The oldest African-American church in Orlando, the congregation agreed Sunday to stay away from Saturday's march through their neighborhood.
We won't be there to hear them. It's like a ghost town.
The members of the community created a flyer that basically was designed to let the community know to dis and dismiss ignorant racists, is what they said, with the message being to be cool and just stay away, to find something else better to do with your time on that particular day. It occurred during Black History Month, and we felt like there were other activities that were going on during that time. And since the march was going to take place in our African American community, we certainly wanted the African American community to stay away and do something more positive. So they designed this flyer, and then the next step was really to decide how the flyer would be distributed. As I said, we were about 9 days out, but it was real important, of course, to get the word out to the community, to encourage people to find another alternative on that day.
Tonight, Orlando leaders are already circulating these flyers, urging people here to keep their cool. Church leaders in Orlando have a plan in place to respond to the hate group. These flyers urge everyone to ignore it.
As a commission of the district where they wanted to march, my major responsibility, I felt, was to keep the residents and the constituents I represent cool, to keep them from overreacting, to keep a big group from forming downtown, to keep any kind of conflict from occurring.
Along with the citizens group that was involved, we adopted the theme called Operation Be Cool, and we designed a t-shirt for them that had Operation Be Cool on the front of the t-shirt, and on the back of the t-shirt it said that our dignity will always rise above ignorance. About 5 days out from the rally, the Operation Be Cool team held a press conference on the steps of the Callahan Center, which is located directly in the along the route where the march and the rally was going to take place. We held a press conference there with the purpose again being to get the word out to the community, particularly that community, for people to stay home. So it was just a resounding theme throughout that 9-day period, really trying to encourage people to do something else.
Be cool and stay away. That's the message. Don't dignify a slimy group of people by creating a greater incident and ending up on the wrong side of the law.
The day before the rally, we had invited some representatives from the Florida Commission on Human Relations and the U.S. Department of Justice to come down and conduct training with our community leaders on how to be demonstration marshals, and really to training on how to handle events of this magnitude. So we did that training the day before. On rally day, they met at noon, a couple of hours before the rally was scheduled to begin. We went over some of the points that were covered at the training on the day before, and we gave them their assignments along the route, and it was just amazing the enthusiasm and commitment that those community leaders really exhibited.
And we were ready on February 25th when they came, getting the police department, the sheriff's office, the marshals, the state human relations board, getting the churches together, getting elected officials ready, getting the whole community came together as a whole to make sure everybody was safe.
We had a debriefing meeting with them, and along with the U.S. Department of Justice and the Florida Commission on Human Relations, and we just talked about the overall success of really the police department coming together with the community and coming to a joint decision about how we should respond to the rally.
We decided we really want this written up in governance magazines regarding municipalities, for police magazines, because this particular model can be replicated. We're going to organize ourselves and stay organized in an effort to make sure if any type of civil disturbance approaches Orlando, we will have a frame of reference in place based on elected officials, ministers, our own law enforcement, our fire department, don't let me forget them, together to make sure we can step on it, make it cool, and make it successful like the Cool It campaign.
I'm Mike McCoy, Chief of Police of the Orlando Police Department. On February 25th, the National Socialist Movement came to Orlando, Florida. I could not believe that in this day and time, Orlando was having to deal with such an issue like this. However, like many problems, there are opportunities, and we had a great opportunity here in Orlando on February 25th, and we took that opportunity. We seized that opportunity, and we shined. From the very first day that we heard they were coming to town, our elected officials, our ministerial alliances, and the overwhelming vast majority of our community realized that the best response to this event was simply, don't dignify it with your presence. Stay home. As one of our ministers said, without oxygen there can be no fire. Well, there was no fire in Orlando. We set the standard for how a community ought to respond to these types of incidents. Mayor Dyer, along with the commission and the entire business community, wanted Orlando to have a professional but appropriate response to this event, and we did. I have never been more proud of the Orlando Police Department, the men and women that make it up, and the community. And I stress the community, because this was not just the Orlando Police Department's plan, this was a community plan that came together. We can deal with dissidents. We can deal with people of sharply different opinions and do it peacefully. Again, in closing, let me thank each and every one of you and remind you that you have set and put in place a model for other cities and towns across this nation to follow should they be faced with a similar issue as Orlando was on February 25th. Thank you so much.